Seth.
Aaron.
There was so much pressure to have a good clap.
Because I let
failed.
it off.
Yeah, you set the bar high. How are you, Taryn?
I'm good. How are
doing?
you guys?
Good. Haven't seen you in a while since the smoky haze of Jasper National Park.
Yeah, just about a year ago.
Has it been that fast? Wow.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
Some things a year ago feel like yesterday, and some things a year ago feel like 5 years ago.
That's fair.
It's weird how that works.
That's fair. So what are we thinking for an episode today? Is Taryn our poster child for killing it from scratch? I feel like you've been shooting for so long, Taryn, but it's less than a year.
I know, it has been. Well, I was thinking about that. I think it's been just about a year, officially.
From looking
From
at the little triangle of ISO, aperture, and shutter speed to...
Or notepad. Do you have that notepad still?
Yeah, I do. I do have my notepad.
To doing gigs. That's crazy. You're working way faster than I ever did. I'll tell you that. Much. So this will be a fun episode. Taryn, thanks for coming on. We've mentioned you so many times, I think, on this podcast, and you would know that because you listen. Hopefully you do.
Over and over and over.
Hopefully you listen to it a million times. Taryn makes the social clips, the little reels that I post. If they're not that great, it's because I haven't posted them that well. They're always great that Taryn, the way she makes them. So we're really grateful to have you as part of the team. And we thought it'd be a good episode, Aaron, fill in any gaps that I'm missing here, to have you on and talk about going from zero, like we just mentioned, knowing literally nothing beyond your iPhone, I guess, of how to take a picture, to booking clients and gigs. That's really impressive.
Yeah,
I hope I'm embarrassing you.
I think that's the interesting part for sure. And that's the focus of the episode, is that it has been less than a year, and going from, the confidence to, or maybe no confidence on like how to even take a picture, exposure, get it right. What's the composition? How do I upload things? How do I use Lightroom, to booking? I mean, I would say a dozen, give or take, from what we've discussed, a dozen paid gigs in a year. And while balancing like a full-time job. It's not that she's, full into it. It's just kind of on the side. But I think that's an interesting and good lesson in terms of, I'm curious your thought process on feeling worthy enough to get money for photography, feeling like you can ask that. What were the successes? What were some of the pitfalls? What were some of the, maybe I'm sure you made some mistakes or ran into some walls, just from flying blind in a sense. I mean, and no fault of your own, you're just so new at it. It's just, I think it's fascinating that you went straight to like, I'm going to get paid for this a little bit, and been very successful at it.
Yeah, that was a lot of questions in one. Where do I start?
That's what I do.
Yeah. Yeah. I think my mindset for everything is I didn't have a mindset, which is maybe a good thing for me. I didn't think about anything before going into it. And I kind of think about what gave me the courage to be able to start to reach out to people and just ask for gigs. And I think a big part of it was the fact that I wasn't huge into Instagram when I first started. I sort of was learning photography while I was starting Instagram at the same time. So there wasn't a ton for me to compare myself to, which I think helped me a lot. I think now when I look at Instagram and everyone that's on there, I constantly compare myself and am aspiring to be what I see on there, but I didn't go in having that in the beginning. So it gave me the confidence to just ask people, because there was nothing that I was going off of in the beginning, which I think was a good thing for me.
Yeah. Wow. I'm going to jump in right there because I've told this story before about, I'm just relating to you big time, because the way I started photography was pre-Facebook. It was just a friend of mine and myself, and he started this project about taking a picture every single day for 365 days of the year. It was a friend up at my cottage, and there wasn't a ton to do always in the summer on super hot days and stuff. And so I really dug in with him. We figured, how can we just be creative and have fun and maximize our creative, and just work out our creative muscle to the maximum of our ability without, there was this digital era didn't exist. There was no Instagram to compare ourselves to. It was just thinking that we were awesome and taking great photos, even though a lot of them sucked. But just being so excited about being creative. And what's interesting with what you just said, comparatively to what I just said, is I literally didn't have a choice to compare anywhere. I mean, I could go look at a National Geographic magazine, or I could walk into an art gallery. Sure. There was literally no space online. I don't even think the smartphone, maybe iPhone had just been revealed, the very first one. But what's interesting about your story is that Instagram and other social media platforms very much have a foothold in the digital space as you're learning. And it's almost like you were able, I don't know if this is on purpose or by accident, to have the discipline to say, hey, I'm not going to look at that. I'm just going to focus on having fun, getting better, whatever that looks like to you. And I'll pop into this digital world every now and then to share my stuff, maybe get inspired. But it seems like you were very aware early on as a beginner, starting at zero, that this is something that could be dangerous. I'm just going to have some fun. Am I right, wrong? Where have I got that sort of close and sort of not?
That's definitely right. I think too, I just went into it thinking the worst case scenario is they'll just say no. And I've had a ton of no's, but if that's the worst case scenario, that's not super scary to me to just be turned down over and over and over. You just need one person to say yes and give you a shot. And then from there, I just started to build. One person said yes. And I find, especially because I do mostly cabins, I'm doing a little bit with some other businesses, but a lot of cabin hosts know one another. So I think that sort of helped me. The first place that I had, she had a sister who also had a cabin. So that got my foot in the door for that one. And it snowballed without me realizing that it was snowballing.
Right.
So
right. I feel also, I've only known you from our trip to Jasper, our last TPM retreat, which is, I guess, where you were very, very new. Aaron had just loaned you his old camera. He had just sent you that diagram we talked about with the ISO, aperture, and shutter speed. But I've talked with Aaron. We've mentioned a lot of times, we've got to have Taryn on, talk about her success story in under a year and just how much headway you've made. Hopefully it feels like you have made headway, because you have. Often when we're in our own heads, it feels like we're not really getting that far. We're stuck, or we're not moving as fast as we'd like to be. So I guess hearing things like this is reassuring. But from the conversations I've had with Aaron and what he's told me, since you guys converse daily, right? You both work at the same school. It sounds like, and again, correct me if I've got this wrong, or maybe you have a better take on it, I'm sure you do, that a lot of the yeses you're receiving from clients, even as a beginner, as someone with no portfolio, stems from being terribly honest. Hey, hey, I'm brand new. I'm willing to learn. I've studied, I've practiced. This is the small portfolio I have to show from myself. I know I'll do a good job. I'm capable. I may not be the best in the world, but I can do this. Is that sort of the message you're trying to put out as a very, very, very beginner photographer trying to get clients? Or are you trying to finesse? Are you trying to say the right thing? What is it for you?
No, in the beginning, I really said, I have no idea what I'm doing. I've just started this, and it was a hobby for me in the beginning. And I've had conversations with Aaron when I was first getting into this, of sort of the etiquette of it's not always great to just go shoot for cabins and not get paid for it. There's other people in the industry that impacts. So I was very firm in the beginning of, if I'm not getting paid for it, I feel like I'm doing a disservice to the rest of the cabin community by not getting paid. But that's obviously hard for me to say, I want to be paid for this, but I have zero experience and nothing to show you to prove that I can do it. And I do think that people respected my honesty in the beginning. I think I am very personable, and I come across genuine because I'm blatantly honest. And the few people that, I attracted to that part of it got me those gigs. And then I was able to get a little portfolio to keep pushing.
Right.
So yeah, I definitely think people relate to honesty and want to give people a chance that are being upfront about where they're at.
Right. What was the response when you said, I literally have no idea? I'm sure you didn't say, I literally have no idea what I'm doing, but you probably mentioned, I'm inexperienced. My portfolio isn't as large as some of the other people you've talked to. Do most people just not care? I mean, how people listening may be going, that doesn't make any sense. How are you getting gigs? Like, what kind of people are booking someone with no experience? How is, did you have anything to show? What's the response back from people? I guess people just must be vibing with you in the very, very early stages as you work your way up.
Yeah, I am still asking myself that question. I don't know what makes people go with me over other people. I imagine because I don't have the experience and I don't get cabins exposure. I don't have a ton of followers, so I think a lot of people right off the bat say no. I think when I give them my Instagram to look at, they look at it and it's an immediate write off, and I know that. So I don't know what's making them say yes. I think I'm probably cheaper than most off the bat because I don't have that experience. So I think right now that's working for me. And I've pushed myself to kind of up my pricing a little bit. And it's hard because, again, there's a chance they say no because I'm still inexperienced. Mm-hmm. But I wish I had the answer for you as to why people are going with me. I'm not.
Well, I think if I can put a theory out there, I think you surfed a wave that most people will skip and wait for, whether it's a better opportunity or more of a portfolio, or I need 5,000 followers before I ask. Like, they create these narratives or these fake sort of like stop points. Like, I'm not going to ask for money until I have 10,000 followers. Like, that's ridiculous. Or I'm not going to ask for money until I do 10 free ones. I think you're missing out on these numerous waves of that you can surf, hypothetically, where you can say like, hey, I'll do this I don't have a portfolio. I'd like to build one. I trust my talent enough that I can get you some good stuff. I'll do it for a really decent price. And I think that's probably what's attractive. They're not betting the farm on you. They're saying like, all right, she's got a good eye, or, look at her little Instagram page at that time and just be like, hey, let's give her a try. We have the opening. Why not? And then you build up and you're able to get to a point quicker where I think a lot of people would hold back and be afraid of the no, be afraid of people laughing them out of the room. Like, that's the fear, where you were like, I'm just going to ask 100 people and see if 2 say yes, and you were not afraid, I think, in the beginning to ask a lot of people and broach the subject of like, hey, I'm new. I know you're taking a chance. This is what I can do. And like, do you want to work together? Want to give it a go? And even if 100 said no and 2 said yes, those 2 had sisters, like you said, or whatever it is. And then they have friends, and it builds from there. So you caught a wave where most people would just, I think, be wading in the water.
Yeah. Yeah. I think too, I try to be a little bit strategic on the ones I'm reaching out to. I feel like I try to find Airbnbs or cabins that are similar to me, where they're great, but they don't have a huge Instagram. They have a couple pictures that aren't the greatest. And I'm sort of like, hey, I'm new in this. You seem like you don't have a ton going on yet in the social media realm. Like, let's kind of be teammates and guide each other through it. And I think that is really nice to those cabins that don't have 12,000 followers or 20,000 followers. They're small in the beginning. I think we kind of meet each other where we both are, which is nice.
Right. I always like to remind people too, just because you're talking about the cabin photography genre, not everybody listening necessarily is involved in that genre, but the principles are the same. If you're a car photographer, videographer, reach out to the small dealership that just is local. Mm-hmm. Or or that small startup makeup brand, if you're into, portraiture and stuff like that. I like to remind people, don't get caught up in the genre we're talking about, because the principles are the same. I will say this as well. You very much went from beginner to intermediate / advanced pretty quickly with the quality of your photos, from composition just to lighting, a basic understanding. I'm not going to credit you and say that's just talent. Like, you don't, like, it's just an innate talent. Where I'm going with this is, how did you, in my opinion, what effort and hard work did it take? What assets, what resources did it take kind of for you to build that eye quicker?
It's the reason I get 20% on everything that she does.
It's Aaron. That's why. All right. Next question.
The endless questions that I had to answer.
Next question. Well, whatever. Like, even with your joke, if there's some truth to that, asking questions, I mean, let's dig into it. How do you can't theorize good pictures. You can't just think and study and watch YouTube videos. Is it simply repetitions? I'll leave it with you.
Yeah, definitely find somebody that you can ask a million questions to and they answer the million questions and don't act annoyed. I will give Aaron a little bit of credit on that. I've asked him for help a lot as I've been sort of going through the process of learning, and he's been really great on answering silly questions that I should probably know the answer to by my 5th paid gig, because I went from learning to I'm getting paid for this. What do I do?
Hey, we all still leave the lens cap on, even 10, 15 years into this every now and then. So,
I won't embarrass with some of the questions. I do keep a log though of those questions.
No, what are some of the questions? Seriously, I'm interested to know, like, what are in your mind? I'm sure you have maybe 2, 3, or 4, maybe 1.
Well, here's a great just analogy, I think, of Taryn. You know, when you run down a hill and your legs are like you're going so fast that you're about to dig it.
Like the people who chase the cheese wheel. Have you seen that?
Yeah. You're just running downhill so fast that your legs can't even keep up with how fast you're going. But even if you fall, you're still beating everyone that's being careful. Like there is a little bit of a reckless abandonment with what she does, and it's surprising. And I've had many moments where she asked me a question, I'm like Jesus, you're confident if you don't even know this. Like you're just going, like, what was the thing about Lightroom where Lightroom's complicated, I guess, if you're just starting off, like the cataloging and keeping track of your files. And it was just like we're about a year in, and she was like, where are my photos even? Like, I can't even find them. And I was like, how are you organized? And like, it was just, and again, it's only a year in, and you go so quickly doing other things. I think sometimes you miss out on like the things that people take their time to, like, I'm going to really do 3 weeks on Lightroom and study that. Well, she's like, hey, can I have a gig? I'll figure out Lightroom later. Like that sort of thing.
Right.
I think that's happened a lot. And it's only because she's like flying through it and like just going for it, and more of like I'll shoot first and ask questions later. Like I'm gonna just go for this, and I feel confident enough and smart enough maybe that I can back end, I could reverse engineer anything I have to. Like this is not a sport where it's reflexes. It's like there's a lot of time to edit. There's time to hand in your deliverables. There's time at the gig to get the photos that you need. There's like space in between a lot of these movements. And I think she utilizes that super well, which is, I mean, kind of just an interesting thing. I've always been like, I better be a professional at this before I ask, for the most part. And, or at least like super confident in my whole process. And I think that's just been a lesson of like, go for some things sometimes and say yes, and then figure it out.
Yeah, it's funny. We keep using the word confident. I feel 0% confident still. There was
inside though.
Yeah, I guess. And I think I go back to, I should stop saying this about myself. I just don't think things through a lot. I'm like, let me go do it, and then I'll think about it later. And that's how this whole thing started. I
don't know why that made me laugh so much.
That's my advice to everyone.
You know what though?
This might be a good lesson though.
This is a great lesson. Like, think about it's reminding me of immersion. I think I've used this example before. Before I was going to Spain, I was like, I'm going to do Duolingo every night for 20 minutes. And by the time I get there, I'm going to be able to like order stuff and, ask where the beach is and all this stuff. And I get there and I'm frozen. Mm-hmm. But after a week or two, just thrown into the mix, it's figure out Spanish quick. Or, it could be a sport. I'm like, I can watch every YouTube video on how to best kick a soccer ball, but I'm going to learn the fastest by just going out and kicking it and missing by 20 miles for the first 100 kicks. I think that's kind of what we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think you miss out on things in life by thinking too hard about things sometimes. You think and think and think, and then you're missing the whole opportunity versus I just threw myself into it and I thought about it later. I learned about it after. I don't know. And I don't know if that's the best strategy or if that's smart of me, but I tend to be, I shouldn't say, I used to be an overthinker, and I think I missed out on a lot from overthinking things. So my approach with photography is to think less. If I'm enjoying it, and there are components with photography you have to learn, you have to think, you have to figure out the process. But I think if I had spent so much time overthinking it, I would have never done it. And that was sort of my strategy.
Okay, perfect. So you said you're somebody who used to overthink and you missed out on a lot. Now you're practicing photography and it's an opportunity to continue working on that skill of not having analysis paralysis, is what I call it. How? For people listening who are like, I overthink everything. Again, I'll caveat this. You're not an expert, but in your experience, that's a pretty self-aware statement to have just said. I really overthought things. I missed out. I'm doing this thing. I'm not overthinking. It's working for me. What are some tactics? Do you even know?
Or false confidence. I just think the mindset needs to be the worst thing that happens is a no in this case. If you're going into whatever your genre is, wanting to get paid for it, the worst case is somebody says no. Now, there have been a handful of people that have gotten angry at me for the way I have reached out.
Ooh. Tea.
Shucking the corn.
There's been a couple for me.
Angry.
Yeah, mean to me.
Mean.
Wow. Okay.
So, and I don't mean to keep going back to cabin photography, but I feel like that's my genre. So
that's fine.
For me, there's a lot of Airbnbs or cabins that don't have social media. So it's a hard way to reach places if they don't have a place that I can kind of enter into. So I started reaching out through Airbnb, which is a big no-no. I'm really throwing myself out there. To some, which my initial reach out is just, hey, I don't see you on social media. I see your stuff on here. I'm just trying to get in touch. No big deal if you're not interested. And a lot of times the response back is, nope, like, thank you so much. Good luck in your journey and, keep it rolling. There's other people who have felt like my approach in reaching out was to trick them or to force them to have to answer because it would impact their response in Airbnb. And I don't know the back end. I don't know if you don't answer somebody's message on Airbnb, if that impacts your rating as
Truth.
Yeah.
Does.
So there have been people who have felt like I was trying to play the system, and have gotten upset about that.
You're going to leave it at that. Okay. Interesting. Well, I'm gonna still rewind, even if you don't want me to. I'm gonna still rewind.
I don't know if I have an answer to it.
Well, but here's the thing. Listen, I mean, you said that the worst thing in this instance about overthinking could be, well, I guess A, you miss out on even shooting your shot, and B, you get told a no, right?
Or somebody that's angry at me. Yeah, that's probably worse than the no, I guess. Yeah.
But I guess I mean in other areas of life, you said you missed out on things. Feel free to take your time, or if you just don't want to talk about it, that's cool too. But I mean, being reckless can, or I mean, if sometimes we can think if we're overthinking to prevent injury, right? Like I'm not going to jump off. I'm not just going to go, and jump off this 50-foot cliff because I don't want to think. Like there's consequences to that, right? There's potentially financial consequences for not thinking and just, I'm going to put all my money in Bitcoin and I'm going to have no savings. There's, there's lots of different things that can happen. So, I mean, thinking and analyzing things is there to protect us, right? Naturally so. I'm just more curious. I really want to figure out a way to dig into this. You said that you missed out on things. And that requires a lot of thought and contemplation on something. And it's just interesting that now you're able to do something, practice photography, where that doesn't exist. And I'm trying to bridge the gap, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I guess I'm thinking of it in terms of hobbies that I have maybe wanted to try in the past.
Okay.
And feeling like I didn't have the drive or the skill in the beginning to start it. So I didn't even
Okay.
do it because I didn't think I had it in me. And I think part of photography is it, at least in my experience, it does quiet the mind. I feel like I don't think a lot when I am doing photography,
Right.
which is something that attracted me to it in the beginning. It's just kind of you and whatever you're looking at, and it did quiet my mind. And in the beginning, I didn't pick it up saying I want to go run with this and make an Instagram and get gigs. I just wanted something to sort of quiet my mind. So I didn't look, I didn't think I needed to overthink. For guitar, for example. If I wanted to get a guitar, I have to figure out the best guitar to play. I have to figure out all of the chords before I do it. I picked up the camera to quiet my mind, and I think I've just sort of continued running with that.
Right. Like you can pick up a camera and just kind of start, whereas a guitar maybe requires more theory. You can't make pretty sounds without having some kind of thought process. It sounds like photography is meditative for you. We talked about that a lot. Having hobbies or even our profession where the action produces a still mind. For me, that's running. My feet on the pavement. There's nothing like it's just I'm having to think about my time, pace, all that, excuse me, all that stuff, but everything else is still. I think a still mind is really, really beneficial just for our health and, overall wellness.
Yeah, Seth, and to tie your thought and your question together, I think in present day, if she were to overthink, or if anyone out there is overthinking certain things, you're creating these false like speed bumps, these fences where it's like, you know what? I'll reach out after I have a year of practice. I'll reach out after I have 2,000 followers. Like you make up these things that maybe are procrastinating the fear of being rejected or the fear of failing or the fear. You're making it safer for you by pushing it, kicking the can down the road. Whereas I think she realized, like in this case scenario, like I'm gonna go through this, and the worst that's gonna happen is that they're gonna say no, or maybe they don't like my stuff. I'm new, so if they don't like my stuff, that makes sense because I'm brand new. It's not it might hurt a little, but it kind of makes sense, and I'll just learn from it and improve and not take it so personally. I think if you overthink, you miss those potential. Again, the sister cabin that she did a good job. Now she has another gig. Now that gig spreads onto another. Like that all would have been missed if you're waiting for the right moment to approach the girl, the right moment to apply for that job, the right moment to have kids, like whatever it is. If you're overthinking it, you might miss what's destined for you. Not to be too like, woo woo, but like that, I think that's the thing. Like she just kind of didn't have any of those fake barriers.
So, question for both of you then. We'll start with Taryn here because she's our guest. Is there an optimal time for anything? Right? Like, is there an optimal time to start anything or do anything that's has an extreme impact on your life or is worthwhile? I've been thinking about this a lot recently. Like, is there a perfect time to do that thing? Or is there, because if you are of that belief and that isn't so, you run the potential of just completely missing the window. Like the perfect time never comes, I guess is sort of the theme of what we're talking about. Maybe I just summarized what you said, Aaron.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a thought I've been having a lot recently. And I'm curious to know your thoughts on it, both of you.
I think I think yes and no to that. Photography, whatever, pick it up, try it. If it's not your thing, it's not. There's certain things in life. I think kids comes to mind when people think about having kids. It's like, I need to save enough money, or I need to make sure I've traveled to every single place that I need to go to. And I don't think those things ever happen for people. I don't think you ever have enough money. I don't think you've ever enjoyed all of your free time. So there are certain things that I I think you need to think through. I would not take my approach to not think about anything when it comes to photography, but I don't know. I don't know if there ever is the right moment. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
There's a way to be smart, but also do what you want to do because life is short. And not to get too deep, but I lost a parent at a young age. And I think that was a huge impact on me to, at 16 years old, that, wow, life can be taken really quick from you. And that was a huge shift for me to just do what you want to do and be smart about it. But it is short, which I know is so cliche, but it is. And I think if you want to do something, you should go full force into it.
Yeah, I think that's more understandable when it's impacted you firsthand.
Yeah.
For someone like me to hear life's so short, I haven't had that experience that you just mentioned, right? I'm thankful for that, and I'm sorry that happened to you, but I feel like knowing that firsthand drives it home, like you just said, right? So I think we have to take it from people like yourself who have had those experiences like that and have faith in what you're saying is true, because I imagine it is.
Yeah. And I mean, you guys have had people on here who really have talked about those moments they've had in life. And I think that's important for people to hear, because people that maybe haven't experienced those things, and the guests you have had on here and their stories are, 10 times more eye-opening to me than losing a parent, not to compare one to the other. But I think it's hard for people to understand how short things really are. And if you have a passion and something you want to try, just go for it. I think should be the lesson or the takeaway from that. And that's why people should think less.
Right. But the important part too, and what holds people back, is thinking that they should be good right away, or there should be some sort of standard to be upheld to right away. Mm-hmm. In the realm of photography, to go full circle to the start of our conversation, Instagram is the bane of that existence. Right? You see all these crazy photographers and you think that's where I should be. It's so irrational, but for whatever reason, it's just, it toxically embeds itself in our brain. So, I mean, I think what the important part of what you're just saying is let's just do stuff and be awful. Let's suck. And going in with that mindset's important. I mean, I haven't bouldered in a long time. When I started bouldering, I thought I'm like a pretty athletic guy. I'm pretty fit, pretty strong, pretty athletic most of my life. I can barely hold on. And then you have some little scrawny kid just rip through this thing and you're like, wow, I'm brutal. And it comes down to bracing, being awful in the beginning. That's I think I've mentioned this concept a lot on this podcast. And I don't know if there's tactic to this, to getting to this place, but just being like, yeah, man, I'm awful. This is great. I'm so bad, but I'm willing to learn. I'm willing to get better. I like seeing improvements. I like knowing where I came from. I'll look back, celebrate my wins, and I'll enjoy the process. I guess I don't know how to teach that. I don't know if either of you do. Maybe it's just hearing it so many times. So maybe Aaron and myself coming on weekly and telling that over and over and over and over again helps. Because I don't think it's something you can really learn and just theorize. I
think anyone that has learned an instrument, learned skateboarding or like BMX or tricks on a bike, learned an art craft, like anything that there's almost impossible to be good right off the bat. Like one of those skills, you can't I can't give my son a guitar and he is like, oh, you're really talented. Like there's 0% chance. But if he sits and goes through it for months and months and months, he will make improvements if he gets past that beginning part. My dog's squeaking in the background. Do you hear
Cap's
that?
Excited. Cap's working hard at getting better at squeaking toys.
That's great. He never uses the toy except if I'm on a podcast.
You want to roll or you want to pause?
No, it's fine. It's fine.
All right.
Listen, we all have pets. We love dogs.
Yeah.
But I'm getting passionate. So I think that's one thing. That's how you teach it. I have friends that I've tried to introduce to golf, and after day one, they're like, "This is impossible," and they never do it again. And then they will suck at golf forever. If you get through that sort of like, maybe you look at it as a challenge, like, this is frustrating. I feel like I should be able to do it. Golf's a perfect example. Bouldering's very similar. Like, I'm strong, athletic. Why can I not climb this wall where this 10-year-old can do it? But it makes you go like, I feel like I should be able to do this. And it's a challenge then. It's a puzzle that you have to undo. I think that is part of it, being able to get through those things without the sort of ego taking over and it's like, you suck, you're embarrassing yourself. Everyone's looking at you. Everyone's laughing at you at the driving range or at the climbing gym. Why are you even here? This kid can do it. You can't do it. Like that's the inner talk that makes you just run for, comfort. I mean, that's the bottom line. Like, I'm going to run for comfort and not put myself out there. I don't remember, Taryn, if like the first 20 people you asked said no, maybe if the first 100 said no, you might be like, okay, this is not for me, I guess. But like you keep going to a point, you keep pushing through and you break a barrier. Now you got that gig and now it's the next thing. Now you're in at restaurants. Now you're doing like other things. You're experimenting with it. You're still finding your style and like who you are even as a photographer, but you're able to like leap board off these levels and you might plateau for a little bit, but then you leap it to the next step and you're like, oh, I never could do that before. Now I can. You just keep on kind of going with it and not be afraid of the, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Sometimes it's 3 steps back, but you just keep on going and working through that sort of like that beginning suck. You're going to suck the beginning.
Thank you for that.
Yeah. Boom. Thanks,
you said something in there that I was going to say earlier, going to the driving range and sucking and people seeing. I think that was a really good thing about photography is you can suck in silence. Like you can be really bad and not like nobody's seeing all the pictures you're uploading into Lightroom and your process of getting to that final product of a picture, which I think was really appealing is that if you are worried about performing the best or looking the best or putting out your best, you can do it. You can craft it silently until it's ready to be put out. And I think that was a big part. I think about when I've tried wakeboarding or snowboarding, I would always get discouraged because people are watching me fall time after time after time. There isn't as much of an audience when you're working on your craft and photography, which I think was something that was really appealing to me too.
Yeah, except when you get up on the wakeboard, finally everyone's like, yes. And
yeah.
And it's this weird, we set this false narrative in our head that people are judging us and laughing. I know for myself, I'll speak for myself. Let's say this happens often when let's say I see somebody who's really overweight running outside and I'm driving my car. I'm like, hell yes, they're getting after it. Good for them. You know what I mean? Or somebody at the bouldering gym who just keeps falling. Usually it's me. But if it's somebody else and they just keep going back for more and more, I'm like, hell yes. That gets me so excited. And I guarantee you most people who have a good energy are thinking the same thing. I mean, people are a lot nicer than you think. And this is coming from someone who's usually pretty cynical. But I think it's important to surround yourself with those people as well, that are going to cheer you on just for doing stuff. If you're running a 15-minute mile and it's your hardest effort, that's your hardest effort. You literally can't do any more, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
that's something to be proud of, in my opinion.
And if you keep doing it, you will then be a 14-minute mile and then a 13-minute mile and until you're...
Which is still maybe slow, right? But it's incredible.
Yeah. We have a kid at school who alternate program and he literally plays a lot of basketball. He went from playing 0 basketball to playing a lot of basketball for many, many, many days. He is one of the best shooters in our school and he's never played a game of basketball.
Right.
It is hours of practice that he did not have before. It's hours and hours of practice. It's pushing through it. It's not the first day you're shooting and been like, I missed 10 of my 11 shots. I quit. I suck at this. It's hours and hours of shooting threes, and like it's ridiculously impressive when you watch and you're like, you've never played basketball? And he's like, no. And he's like, I just played a lot this year. And it's like, oh, well, that makes sense. Like we've talked about it many times. There's nothing that can replace doing it and getting out there and trying and putting yourself in situations time and time again that are maybe uncomfortable, maybe put you in a bad spot, but you have to push through and you learn from those mistakes. You learn from the Airbnbs that are mad, or you maybe I got to rephrase that a little bit, or go in knowing that, or whatever it is. You learn from those uncomfortable, crappy situations. Taryn had a moment where I had the same moment early on in which I'm not, I haven't been along forever, but I had a very distinct style when I started. It was very blue. And I ran into some problems when I started getting into client stuff where it's like, we like your style, but it's like, it's just too dark. It's too gloomy. We're trying to sell stuff. And at first I took
You're selling a haunted house.
Yeah, I took it personally, of course. But then you're like, okay, I'm going to adjust. I'm going to change. I'm going to grow. Right. That makes sense. I never really thought about that. Okay, great. Let's move on and grow and be able to turn that on and off if I need to. So I think it's just like the more stuff you put in, the more issues you run into, the more problems, the more mistakes, the more failures, quote unquote failures, you're going to learn just a ton more than if you're sitting alone, like trying to figure it out quietly. That'll take just so much longer. Boom.
Right.
That's it.
Well, I want to ask Taryn this. So as someone who, I guess you started in July, right, of 2023, photography.
Mm-hmm.
Are you someone who the approach is, I'm going to do the best I can, learn as much as I can. This is fun. I'm enjoying it. Let's see where this leads. Or do you have targets you're trying to hit?
The first one there. I don't have any targets. I'm going to just keep doing this till I don't like it. And it's funny that you asked that because a lot of my community, like my friends, family, their first question is, so is your plan to leave your job and start doing photography full time?
Right. I'm sure it is.
Everybody's first question. And it's funny because that's never even a thought of mine. I am doing this as a hobby. I love my full-time career. I'm a teacher and that's what I love to do. I think the joy of photography would go away if my livelihood depended on it, honestly. So I'm just doing it because it's fun and I don't have targets. I thought in the beginning as my profile was slowly growing that followers were going to be really important, or, I really want to have a reel that's going to go viral. And I think in the beginning, that was a little bit of my mindset. And recently that's shifted a bit. I just don't care about that. And I think that's a big part of why I come off as genuine or honest to people is I'm really not doing this to try to get big. I like my profile. I like my style. I'm loving the people I'm meeting through it. Other photographers, hosts that I've worked with. I like that part of it. It's not for me a number or going viral at this point. I just like the process of photography.
Very well said.
Mm-hmm.
Does that mean that are you setting I guess what I'm going to ask is, are targets different than goals? I mean, how do you continue to push the bar without having some kind of sight on improvement? I guess this question is, are you just kind of following your nose and improvements naturally happening as more opportunities come, as you become more and more involved, say yes to things? Or are you saying, I want to go to that place and I want to get that thing, or I want to make that accomplishment?
I feel like I don't have answers to these things. It's
you
really
don't need to.
Yeah, it's just developing as I'm going. I recently got into some food stuff, which has been fun. I never thought that I would like food photography, and I did that and loved that. So now I'm kind of like, ooh, that would be fun to reach out to a couple restaurants and maybe start to do some of that. I'd like to not get stuck in one category, which I feel like I am a little bit right now. I was really geared toward cabins. So I guess maybe a goal of mine would be to start to try different genres and see what I'm liking more. But editing is a big thing for me. I think a big part of photography that I like is editing, and I'm noticing my editing improving over time. So that is a goal, I guess, is to continue to kind of figure out my style and what works for me in the editing realm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So just like vague in that sense. Yeah, I like that. I mean, I'm similar. I call it the follow your nose approach, where I'm doing this thing with the podcast, with photography, with other things. I like saying yes to things, or, oh, that'd be cool. Or, oh yeah, that's interesting, or that's neat, or it'd be fun to do this. Every time I catch myself kind of saying those, like prefacing a sentence with that'd be cool, or, oh, wouldn't it be interesting if, as opposed to saying, gonna go do this. I've never been someone like that who was in school and was like, I'm going to be a veterinarian, or I'm going to be a doctor, or I'm going to be a dentist or something. I've just always kind of been someone who I'm going to just kind of keep sniffing around and let's see where life takes me. I think certain people are cut out for each approach.
Yeah. Well,
right.
Even like doing editing and videos for the podcast, like I was like, oh, that's cool. I've never made reels before for something like that. Let's try that out. So
and that's a good point too, because like now, if we continue to grow like we are, you're involved.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, you're involved with the show as someone who has not held a camera for more than a year, really, which is really cool.
Yeah.
Just because, like, hey, it sounds kind of interesting. I'm willing to learn, like what you guys are doing. It comes back to your honesty. I think that's maybe the cornerstone of this one of them, of this episode, has been just being brutally honest with your skill level, with your intention, meaning what you say and saying what you mean.
Yeah, I think also multitasking I think people can get very linear. Like, okay, I need to find an editing style that I like first. That could take 2 years before you really settle into something that you like. Then you're like, okay, I have my editing style. Now I need 5,000 followers. That could take another 3 years.
Just too linear.
Versus being like, I'm going to kind of figure this all out all at the same time. And that might mess me up in times. That might cause problems, but I will adjust and pivot. And I feel like I'll get ahead faster with maybe some trip ups versus just kind of doing one thing, making sure it's perfect at a time. I think just kind of like, I'm going to look at it all and I'm going to try to figure out my editing style as I go. I'm going to try this new food photography. That was cool. Let me try this. Let me try that. Let me try this and see kind of what sticks. Again, Seth, the first year of photography, I mean, I remember it was like, I did a lot of weird shit. Did a lot of weird photos. Like, I don't even want to talk about them, but just a lot of weird stuff and trying to figure out, hey, what do I really like? Where do I want to go with this? What's it? And it's still changing. It's still like really changing. You get opportunities that you're like, all right, this is something completely new. I'm gonna go take some photos of microphones in nature. Like, it's a weird thing. I never thought I would ever be doing that, but that's what's happening, and you just like keep on growing and figuring out where your little position in this creative field is.
Yeah. It's almost, as you were saying all that, it's almost maybe the principle would be, I don't know where I'm going, but I'm going,
Yeah.
I'm not thinking if I'm going.
I'll have to put that on a hat. Don't know where, but I'm going.
I'm going somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that might stress people out too. Like, oh, no. I need to know like what my plans are and, X, Y, and Z. I mean, I wouldn't recommend being so rigid in one end and so lackadaisical on the other. I mean, it's a balance, but I think you can potentially really set yourself up. And I don't know if I'm pretty sure I've said this on the show before. You can really set yourself up for disappointment if you're so concrete in what you say you want, especially if you tie that into, I'll be happy when, as opposed to, I'm just going to kind of go with the flow, improve, get better. And I'm going to enjoy the experience that I don't know are coming.
Yeah, I agree with that. I also think that you can go through like this field waiting for the green lights, waiting for all the green lights, and I'm saying this maybe in just a different way, but it's like you give yourself a challenge by like, I'm going to reach out. I'm going to try to do some photography. I'm going to try to get paid for something. It all could go very poorly. But you then again have to just kind of like readjust, and you learn so much from that versus again just kind of like waiting for when is the perfect moment. I don't know if you'll ever find it.
I mean, I definitely think that just doing something and failing at it, you learn more than trying to learn it before you do it, in my opinion. So I learn more from failing and then getting feedback from that than trying to prepare to do the thing. Does that make
I got it. I just wanted to be silly.
Yeah. I mean, and obviously I had my little notepad of everything that I was learning before I got into photography. There's some basics to it, but it's trial by error, I think. So
right. Well, I'm gonna ask you something I don't think I've ever really asked anyone, because a lot of the people who come on the show are experienced, like many, many, many years. So I don't really get the opportunity to ask this question. I guess I could, but so I think it's quite obvious that a lot of beginners in anything drop off just because they're not improving at the rate they're improving. All the things we've talked about. It's frustrating, not getting clients as fast as they wanted to. Insert whatever variable there. As someone who's a beginner, and since what we just said, it's more likely that beginners quit or stop doing something, what would it take for you to stop doing photography?
I think that when I feel like it's impacting my mental health because I'm being judged or criticized for what I'm putting out there. And to be honest, that is a challenge for me. Aaron kind of spoke to it a minute ago where I got some feedback on something that was like the first time that a client wasn't 100% thrilled with what I put out. And it was a big challenge for me to overcome that because I think I'm so very critical of myself that having that on top of me was hard. And I do worry with photography that the negative feedback might be something that would shut me down over time. But I also think it's a really good opportunity for me to push through that bad feeling of criticizing myself. So part of me wants to say that I would stop photography when I felt like I was being criticized or what I was putting out there wasn't being liked. But I also wonder if that would be a motivator for me to push through and deal with that uncomfortable feeling. So I don't really know if anything would stop it. I do think about the future and the time that I have and, having a family or my career becoming too much. So time perhaps might be a factor, but it really is something that I love. And in my life up until this point, I haven't had something that I felt I loved this much. So I don't really see it stopping. There's things that I can think of that might be barriers, but I see myself pushing through those and kind of challenging me in life.
Right.
She says she was upset. I've never seen someone throw more dishes against the wall in the middle of social studies class in 6th grade. Like it was weird.
Teacher's lounge.
She just brought in a bag filled of dishes to deal with the hurt of that feedback.
One after the other.
But
how did you get over it though?
Well, I'm going to pat myself on the shoulder a little bit because
let's see it. Do it
again. When you have
for
a
YouTube,
mentor,
we talk
about having a mentor. We talk about having a mentor a lot, or someone that's been around the block that knows certain things. And I smiled at this moment because I had been there. I had been there before where my styling did not fit, and the client was absolutely right. They were. And I remember saying this line because I had thought about it for many hours and I gave it to her in 30 seconds. And I just said, hey, there's a difference between what you personally love for your own photography and what a client needs to sell their stuff. There's a big difference. And you have to be able to separate the two and say, I edit the way I want to edit for my photos, but I need to edit the way this person wants to edit or would be best for their brand, situation, product, whatever it is. And I think like having that sort of feedback, it isn't as painful because then it's like, oh, it's not about me. It's not about my editing. It's my editing for this product. That's the issue. And just learning those little things, I think, goes a long way in terms of getting through this business. There's just a lot. You're putting yourself out there. You're trying to do something. You're getting paid for it. It is subjective. It's not like math where it's right or wrong. It's like, I like the way this look. And they're like, I hate it. And you're like, well, who's right? Who's wrong? I guess you are, because you're paying for it. So now we have to like figure this out, So I think you do get a little bit of a tougher skin as you go through this, as you go through those moments of someone being like, I don't really like your work, but that doesn't happen on Instagram. We're not used to that. It's all like fire emoji. This is sick. Great photo, bro. It's all that. No one's like, your exposure seems a little low. Like no one's giving any sort of feedback on Instagram. Really, it's rare, but clients do, because they're paying for it, or you had a deal, or they're like, I don't want to put this up. It doesn't match my grid. Like whatever it is, like they have the last say, and that's a different beast than just putting up stuff on Instagram. And that's a learning experience, So,
well, and the client was totally correct. After I made the adjustment, it was like, oh yeah. So I just think that it was good that happened to me. I'm happy that happened to me. And I don't want more. I don't want that to happen more per se, but I just think that was like, wow, this is a really good thing that's happening in a hobby that I can now apply to my personal life,
Right.
So it was good.
So that person gave you a gift in a sense, right?
Yeah. And to answer your question before how I handled it, I just broke all the dishes. That was it. It's a lot.
The rage room.
In front of kids.
Yeah.
And I think another interesting point, I just thought of this, just with our two stories is, I'm 5 years in almost, to like starting photography, starting Instagram. Seth, what we're doing, love it. Clients, doing certain things, not to brag. I'm just saying what's actually happening. And I've talked about this a few times on the podcast, and here's just another example or another data point where it's like, the gift that we have a second career, or a first career, I should say, gives sort of this ability to let go and be kind of reckless with our pursuit in this hobby, because it's not life or death. It's not, I need to make this deal. There's not a desperation or like a timidness, which I think people pick up on. Like, oh, this person's desperate for this job. Something feels off with this, and they're going to go a different way. There's sort of a very free and honest, like, hey, you want pictures or not? Like, this is what I'll do. Like, no, cool. All right. Have a great day.
Actual
and,
pitch.
Move on, move on and just kind of flow through it, where it's not like, oh my God, I lost that gig. How am I going to pay my mortgage? Like that freak out pressure that we put on ourselves.
Right.
And I know it's like, that's a gift. Again, that's a gift that we have, that the career that pays our bills, and we can just, everything else is gravy, but it creates an attitude that I wish I could bottle and share with someone, to just be just reckless abandon, go for it. And I think that comes across, just be honest, be super transparent, give a money back guarantee. You don't like the photos? I'll give you your money back. Like get more sales, get more deals, get more conversations going, because you don't need it. Like that's the thing. Like that's the impression. Like, I don't need this, but I'll do it if you want. Like that's the sort of coolness that you can do, the sexy indifference that I've talked about before. Like you're able to do those things and just kind of be like, all right, next, and move on, not cry about it and be like, please, or I said 500, I'll do it for 100. I'll do 50. Oh, and then you're like, oh my God, I just like sold myself to make this happen. It's not a good look. And I don't think it goes well. So I just thought I would kind of round that up, because I know we've talked about that before. And this is another kind of example where you have that sort of confidence to just be like, whatever.
Right. Whatever.
Right?
Has that been an actual pitch of yours? You want photos or not, Aaron?
Yeah. Here's my stuff.
Not, whatever.
Reply yes. I like that one. Reply
if not,
yes.
You're not very bright because I'm the best ever.
If not, I'll be fine. I don't need you. That's what I say.
True. That's true. Well, do we have anything else to add? It's been a unique episode.
I know. I hope that I gave you the answers you needed.
No, it's cool. I think it's good for people. There's probably, I think we have more starting off photographers as an audience, as an active audience. I would say we have more people, that are interested in photography. It's really hot right now for them. That's probably who's seeking us out and listening weekly because they're trying to get somewhere, wherever that may be. And I think it's good to hear someone that like, they didn't need 10,000 followers before they got their first paid gig. They just kind of like started and went after it and had a lot of success. And it doesn't take like all those little check marks that we think we have to fill out before we're happy or like before we get the thing. You just kind of make the thing happen. Like you are the author of your life. You're not a victim of your life in the sense of like, I'm waiting for it to happen to me. Like we talk about that a lot with Instagram. Like if I get 100,000, I'm going to get those big deals. No, you're not. No, you're not. If you don't ask, you might get something. You might be able to like, the dog bandanas, like get those DMs that we get. Do you have a pet? Do you want to be part of our pet ambassador program? You might start getting that, but you have to reach out. You still have to say, hey, this is my interest. This is my intention, and be the author of your life, of your experience.
How many mic drops are you going to have this episode?
Yeah, that was drop it.
Well, Taryn, thanks so much for your time today. Aaron, pleasure as always. And I'm excited to see what you do in the next, in the coming year. It's been a year. Let's see what happens next year.
Yeah.
I'm excited too.
It's pretty exciting to watch. And I think it's reminiscent of our earlier days. And it's nice to see how much quicker you're picking up on things. And I think ultimately, if I'm speaking for myself, I think that's part of the goal of this show for me is, Aaron, I don't know if you feel the same way. Like I want my contribution to be able to help people get to where they want to go quicker, whatever that is, through my own struggle. I mean, if people listening take half the time I did to reach a certain marker or perform a certain thing, we're succeeding. You know what I mean? And I'm not an expert, but I hope that having guests like you on and stories that Aaron tells and stories that I tell help people kind of think things through and, get things moving and maybe add some extra encouragement or some reminders that people need to hear. But I'm really, really have been excited from the sidelines watching you do what you do. And it's good to see someone who says yes to so many different opportunities. And I think that's going to get you really far.
Yeah. Well, thank you. And I appreciate your support too. It's nice you guys kind of started it all for me. You're the first people I was with when I started this journey. So it's full circle. It's nice to be here. And I appreciate everything from your guys' end.
Very cool. Very cool. All right. Till next time, you two.
Take care.
Bye.